Hello and welcome to another Sister A video. This one will be on CSS Positioning Activity. This is going to take us away from our Dry.or website for a few moments. And you're going to need to create a new project. So you're going to click up here when you're on your site and you're going to make a new project. I've already done one. My project, I named it Sister A Positioning. Name yours, your name, Positioning. It makes it a lot easier to keep track of it. All right, and when you open up this activity, it's going to have two things when you read through the instruction that it wants you to look at before you start, and that is a CSS trick guide to Flexbox and Flexbox Froggy. Those are two things that it wants you to go look at so you can get a little bit of an understanding about Flexbox, which is what we're going to be using for this activity and for laying out your home page, mostly Flexbox. All right, and it also tells you a few important ground rules. You're going to copy and paste these two pages onto two pages you're going to make over here in Glitch. And it says, do not modify the HTML. I was pretty serious about that. Well, that's a real important one. Do not, even though you're tempted, alter the HTML, except you're going to put your name on it. All right, so now that I have created a new what do you call it? Project. Click New Project, give it a name. Then you're going to now create a new file. And the new file, see, it's already got a name right there, but we don't want it to be that. We want it to be, and name them exactly because that's real important. Up here in step 1, it tells you to name the HTML one positioning.html rather than type it all in, just because you end up with mistakes. And I keep hitting that period. Okay. And just then bring it back over here and paste it. I accidentally had a space there. Then don't forget to click Add File. So now I have positioning.html. The other one that I'm going to create is going to be called positionstyles.css. All right. Notice we're not naming them index this time. Oops, I did it before I renamed it. Okay. So now I have to take the steps to rename. All right, now I have my two files. The next thing it tells you after you look at those Flexbox Froggy and the other one, it tells you to take and copy everything out of these two pages onto these two pages over here in Glitch. So I like going upside down, that way when I scroll I don't accidentally grab the CSS page. Scrolling's hard to control sometimes. Alright, that's the top of that. And I'm going to put that on the HTML page. Just paste. And then I'm going to come down and do the same thing for the CSS page. Copy and paste. All right. Now remember, I said you're not going to change anything on the HTML page except you're going to put your name at the very bottom after the div but before the ending body. Give it a few lines and you're going to put your name. I'm going to make mine into like an H1 just so it stands out. And I'm going to put my name. and I'm going to put the class. And I always prefer if these are up on the same line. I don't like it the way the glitch starts them out. Okay, so that's only change I'm making on the HTML is that. And the reason for that is if I click show, you might get this when you click show. All you have to do is click the HTML page. Because you have many files, it wants to make sure that it's trying to look for your index. All right, so I did that, and the reason we put our name on it is at the very bottom. My screen's not tall enough. At the very bottom, I have my name. You can't see it because it's off the page here. But these are the activities. And you go like, well, boxes, okay, that's cool. What are we doing with those boxes? Well, it's got hints for you. And what it wants you to do, and here's an idea, you should click on this little tiny link. I wish they would have made them bigger. And you'll see when you're finished what activity 1 should look like. They should look like this, touching, going across the page. When we do activity 2, click the little this button. It should look like this, overlapping. See now, once I open it, it stays open up here in the menu. Whoops, way down so you see it. It stays open, so you can go back and check yourself. Activity 3 is going to look like this when it's finished. Activity 4 will look like this. And activity 5 will look like this, like a flag. And the last activity, activity 6, will look like this when it's finished, if you do it right. All right, so let's get started. I showed you how to get those to look like that. And let's go back to our code and to our CSS. Now, some of these have like a little hint to help you know maybe what you should do or what needs to be done. All right, up here at the very top of each activity, there'll be a dot content. This is the parent box of the activity box 1. It has the same thing over here, same thing on each one of those, and you're going to be putting information right here and replace that. All right, so the first one, if we're going to use Flexbox, up here in the content, we're going to use display, and we've got to put in WebKit -flex, and always hit that semicolon. And we're also going to put in display flex. Oops, I was right, EX. All right, so those are the things we need in the parent box. And each one, this is just the height and width of the boxes. Each one is 100 pixels by 100 pixels. So by telling them to flex, let's look at it now and see if it looks like the example. And it does. Remember, the example was like that? That's all you have to do. Tell it to flex, which means like stay there and go across instead of vertically. All right, and the hints are here on these, on here. Make the squares move left across horizontally like in this image. Here's the hint for number 2. Overlap and stagger the squares like in that image. All right, so in order to overlap and stagger them, there's nothing we need to do in the content. What we're going to be doing will be down here in the squares themselves. You got to make sure you're on the right one. Sometimes I like to put it at the very top. That way I don't accidentally do it to something else and undo what I've already done. All right, so the first square is going to stay the same. The second square, the green square, is going to, we're going to change our margin top and our margin left. And the margin left will be 50 pixels. We want it to move halfway. So let us look and see if we're in the ballpark here. That's exactly what we wanted to do. Overlap, move over half of a box, and then up half of a box. So let's finish those, half and half. So one will be a negative number and one will be a positive number. Rather than rewrite these, for each of these, I'm going to copy. Yes, it'll be the wrong numbers, but that way I don't have to write them all again. Time. Okay, so this one, instead of the second one, or sorry, the third one, yellow, and yellow is going to be a minus 50, but we're going to go 100 because it's moving to the right. And the last one will be minus 50 and 150. That should be right, if my math is correct. If you think about it, coding is just math. There you go. Just like the image. Ooh, 2 down, 4 to go. All right, so I'm going to move this up so it's out of the way. And activity 3, we have to put a little bit more in there. We're going to also have to put some information up here in the content. And I'm going to go up here and borrow that WebKit so I don't have to write it again, because I'm going to have to reuse that. Just those. Remember, you're getting rid of this comment and just putting the information there. All right, WebKit, Display Flex, and WebKit Flex. But we're also going to add to this number 3, Flex Direction. And we're going to make it row. And, whoops, not faux. And we're also going to add that we want it to wrap. Flex wrap. Wrap, just plain wrap. And lastly, we're going to add, we're going to tell it to justify the content. You will use this in your laying out your home page. Justify. And you're going to center it. No, not center. We'll be centering your home page, but this will be space between. All right, and I forgot to like read to you. See, space between means it has some spaces between, but this says create the 2-column layout like in the item. So let's look at that one. It'll have a red bar going all the way across, and a blue bar will go all the way across. But these two will be in a column form with a space between. So that's why we had to put space between. Flex is great. It does that for you. There's new ways of doing things, but Flexbox is still one of the better. Grid is the new one that we did not incorporate in this class. All right, so that's all we need to do up there. Now what we need to do down here. I'm going to say the red needs to be, you can do it, keep them at 100, 100, 100, 100, which would be 400, or you can enlarge the thing. I'm going to make mine 600 because I like it a little bigger. And we're going to leave the height at 100. And we're going to do the same thing for the blue. Remember the blue was a wide bar also. All right. And then now we have to make our 2 columns go correctly. So that will require us to make the red, green and yellow, change the width and the height of those two. So I'm thinking maybe about 250. Pixels by 200. I'm doubling it. And the same thing for the other. We're going to make it exactly the same. And let's check it out, see if I got close. Well, it looks pretty close to me. Let's double check our example. Whoops, and get rid of that one. Get rid of that one. Okay, that and that. Looks pretty good. All right, so number 4 is what we'll work on next. All right, it says duplicate the positioning in this image. Note the centering is part of the problem with this one. Your solution should have the 4 boxes centered vertically and horizontally. So I'm going to pull up example for 4. It needs to look like that when we're finished. Centering. It looks like this is 200 wide on each of these bars. Leave that open so we can refer back to it. All right, move this up. Activity 4. All right, activity 4 is going to need us to do the same thing we did for 3 with the parent, which was this stuff. I'm going to use most of it. So I'm going to copy that and paste it here. I'll make the changes that I need to make. And it also says that it's going to be a height of 400. All right. And then we're going to make a couple of changes. Most of this will be right. It's going to be the flex direction row. It's going to be flex wrap. And it's going to be justify content instead of space between. If you notice, those didn't have any space between. So we're going to say centered. All right. And we're going to tell it, besides that, we're going to align the content center. We're going to use both of those. That aligns it When you have both of those, it makes it centered vertically and horizontally. You're gonna okay. All right, so now we're going to make the following changes. I'm going to deal in percents. I'm going to say, because it tells us we're having a width of 400. And the height, we're going to do like width and height in each one of these. And it already has width and height 100 and 100, but it's in pixels. All right, so I'm going to say each of them a width, because we want it slightly wider. I'm going to say like maybe 35%. And 25% for the height. Because you have 4 of them, 25%. 25 times 4 equals 100. What did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot my semicolon up here. This little thing indicates you have an error, and it was expecting a semicolon here. It's one of the biggest, easiest things to mess up. All right, so these are all going to be exactly the same, so I'm going to just copy this and put it on all of them, replacing what they had. All right, and now let's go look at it. See how close we got. I think it's pretty perfect. There's that. Yep, we got that one. All right, so now we're on to activity 5. Activity 5 says duplicate the positioning of this. This is the flag. Notice the red is this entire space. Each one of these is probably 100 high, but much wider. Let me think how the best way to put that. Oops, not that. All right, so go back to our code. And activity 5, we're going to need to copy, you guessed it, the parent information again, because we'll use most of it. I'm going to put that down here in number 5. And we're going to do the same with the flex, but in this time we're going to use, instead of row, we're going to use column for the flex direction. We're going to do flex wrap, and we're going to do justify content center, but not align to content. Just those items. And it already says 400. Okay, so now we have the parent set up. Let me think if we need to do anything to the children, which we will. Remember, the red is the biggest part. I'm going to make it maybe 3 times 100, so maybe 300 wide. And it's the full amount up and down, so I'm going to say 400 high. All right, and then on the green, remember that one's going to be across, and I'm going to make it 300 wide. Oops, I only need to change that. And I'm going to make it only 100 high. And I'm going to, well, maybe a little more than 100. So like, this might take some juggling. Maybe 130. And I do the same for all of them, and we'll see how close I got with the math. Because remember, those are all the same. All right? See if it's the full height of the... Well, I guess I could figure that out. 400 divided by 3. Oh, that'll be a little different. 400 divided by 3. 133-ish. It's not exactly even. All right, so let's look at it. I got a flag. And it's exactly the same height. Mathematics. You got 400 divided by 3. And that tells you how high each of them should be. All right, and we're on to number 6, the last one.